Hello, and welcome to another episode of Scions of the Southland. As always, my name is Akshay Schwarn, and joining me on this beautiful night in Atlanta, Georgia, is none other than Mr. Jake Grant. How are you today, sir?
Oh, fine, thanks. I'm all tuckered out though. It's the end of a long weekend, so here we go.
A
Welcome to
long
Sunday.
weekend filled
Yeah.
with a lot of Georgia Tech sports action, I will say.
Definitely the most we've had in about a year. So it was interesting to be keeping tabs on stuff. I was at baseball most of Saturday, just trying to keep up with stuff from there, and then obviously there was a bunch of stuff again today. So
I mean, we had track in action earlier this week and earlier yesterday. As we record this on Sunday night, swim was at ACC Championships. Both tennis teams were in action versus FSU. Women's basketball, men's basketball, softball had 6 games. Baseball had 3 games. It was a packed, packed week, cover to cover.
I guess that means we have a lot to talk about then.
All right, you want to put our usual 30 minutes, obviously about 30 minutes. We never usually end before that timer ends. Let's put that on the clock. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, let's ride.
All right, three, two, one. Let's get started. Let's start with track. I'm not sure exactly what invitational they were at, but I did hear across the way that Nicole Fegans has done it yet again. Please tell me more.
I thought that was interesting because, as far as I knew, they were done with their regular season, and ACC stuff hadn't. ACCs are in Clemson coming up this coming week. Um, does appear, according to Twitter, though, that she broke. Was it the indoor mile? I'm going to double check on that because I don't want to say it's the mile and then it be the 3,000. Okay, yeah, the women's 3,000 elite race at the Camel City Invite, which puts her within the top two heats in the country for the 3,000 meters. So it must have been just sending her up there because they didn't even do a write up on it. So
Yeah, I think all I saw was a tweet from the track and field account that was quickly corroborated by Mr. Todd Stansbury himself retweeting it and quote tweeting it.
if it comes from that man, it must be true. I saw him at baseball on Friday or Saturday, checking out the new digs. So he must have had a pretty busy weekend himself.
I mean, again, lots of stuff in action on campus. I know President Cabrera was also scampering around campus today, visiting the various venues. So leadership shown out. It's
There's,
interesting.
I was gonna say, there's a lot of stuff that comes with being the president or the athletic director that would probably make me pull my hair out. But going into sporting events, getting nice seats and sending out tweets, that'd be right up my alley, I think.
Nice seats and sitting in suites, getting nice. I'm gonna have to workshop this. Sitting in suites, getting nice seats, and sending out tweets.
I
That
mean,
work?
yeah, it sounds right for me. But
Seems legit.
I was gonna say, don't ask me to sit down and read over highway plans or anything like that, because that's the part of the job that would make me want to scream. But luckily, we don't have to get into that. That's for a different Atlanta podcast, I think.
We should talk about those, but eventually, maybe if we have time after we go through the slate here. So I think that about does it for track. Tell me about swimming's performance at ACC Championships this weekend.
All right, I'm not going to damn them with faint praise, and I'm not going to lowball them either. The good news, the spin, is that this is the most points they've ever scored at ACCs, which is really good. They had the most like newsworthy women's ACC meet I think that we've had in a really long time, be it because of some girls grabbing cuts. I believe Cami Hidalgo scored top 10 in all three of her events, stuff like that. Just really excellent all around. Diving, solid, really solid showing this year. But the
Mm-hmm.
women scored a ninth place finish in the conference ahead of Miami, Pitt, and definitely BC. I don't know what it is about BC, but they're just not very good at swimming, and I can say that because I have a friend on the coaching staff there, or at least I used to. But it's it's a start. I think we've had them in the top 40, I believe, all year of our numbers. So when you come from a top heavy swimming conference like this, like yeah, they weren't anywhere close to the top three, which are Louisville, Virginia, and
NC State, probably.
NC State. Yeah,
NC
you're
State
right.
sounds right.
Yes, that is right. Sorry, I was blanking on the pack. Sorry to any pack fans that are listening to this. I don't know why you'd be here, but welcome if you are. Anyways, yeah, nowhere really close to any of those three. But I don't know. I think it was a little bit disappointing to see Florida State still come out in front of them, given that they beat them in the dual meet setting this year. But this might be the most competitive showing we've, frankly, ever seen from this team. So
I
there's
mean,
that.
one of the things that we talked about earlier when we debuted Cap is we couldn't necessarily explain their ranking because they were ranked like in our numbers they were ranked somewhere in the mid
29th.
20s, right?
29th. I went
Yeah.
back and checked my old articles this week.
Yeah, and the thing that I think we were talking about with those was this team has depth now, which is the difference. It has young depth, which is probably why you're seeing that difference in performance year over year and saying this might be the best showing because now you don't just have top line starters who are relied upon to get those results and get those cuts. Now you can go a little bit further down the chain and also expect performance from your freshmen and sophomores.
Yeah, and they have I guess it's for 3 years still because nobody really lost any eligibility year over year. But 2 or 3 years more out of Mackenzie Campbell, who's definitely the new centerpiece of that team. She broke 2 records this week, notched B cuts in both. I believe she got an A cut in the 2 fly, maybe 2 IM. I'm gonna have you vamp on that in a sec so I can see. But if she did get that A cut, that means all of her swims are going to be going to nationals, plus whatever anyone else can slide in under the beat cut threshold. I realize that I just swimming spoke at all of you who probably have a very low bar, but for those of you who've been around and have heard me say this before, I'll say it again. NCAA's 2 time standards: A cut, B cut. A cut is automatic. B cut gets you consideration. When the season is over, they see how many people they have in each event with all their A cuts, and they add all the people with A cuts, B cuts, if that makes sense, if we're still following. And then they pepper in to a set determined numbers of swimmers rather than a number of people in each event. So they'll go and add swimmers to make all the events even length, and then they'll go one at a time, accepting a new swimmer for each event, and that'll come with all of their cuts as well. So it's a very messy process, very inconsistent, but it means if you have one really good event, you get a bunch of swims, and it also qualifies your relays.
Interesting.
So I'm gonna go look that up before I do. There's a couple other names we want to mention. Brooke Switzer, she's been all over the board lately, throwing up B cuts, school record, top 10 ever kind of times. So good for her. She's a sophomore as well. Yeah, Switzer and Campbell are going to be good for the future. True freshman Claudia Butterfield. She's been a name we've seen a lot as well. Ariana Sakalaris, who will be in the distance free, and then a bunch of seniors kind of filled out all the gaps. If we could get one of those A cuts through, though, we'd at least get more, I think, like qualifications to NCAAs in a while, and that would be a great close to the season.
Okay, moving on. Both tennis teams were in action versus the same 2 teams. Oddly enough, women's tennis had a close victory over Miami, and then followed that up with a close loss to FSU. The men lost to Miami, but beat FSU it went down to singles tiebreakers in the final match there. I think for women's tennis, this is a bit of a drop off the last couple of weeks, wouldn't you say, from where they were?
Yeah, I'd definitely say so. But we haven't really seen Ava Rostar and don't really know what's up with her. So I can't slight them too much when one of their top three courts is just not MIA. You know what I mean though. Like we haven't been playing full strength, so there's kind of an expectation there. Also, FSU is the number 6 team in the country, so there's that. Um, I don't know. Miami is not the number 6 team in the country though, so these aren't slouch teams they're playing.
Mm-hmm. I think on the men's side, the Miami loss was a little bit more clear cut, but the FSU series today was interesting. I was checking out the line scores as I was tweeting them out earlier, and we were finishing up in Tallahassee, and you saw that Tech had actually won on the first court. So you had, I think it was McDaniel who had won on the first court. I think Chopra went to tiebreakers in the second set that he ended up losing, and then Deng on one of the lower courts also won his match. So in singles territory, it was actually like a pretty good performance from a depth perspective, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, they also won, so it was a good performance overall, but you get where I'm going with this.
I'm 99% sure we lost to them last year too. So, that's a
progress.
That's a notch. It's a win you can notch,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have no more thoughts on either of the tennis teams beyond those series happened and they were interesting, honestly.
Yeah, I think a couple other takeaways. Marcus McDaniel, he did defeat the number 77 ranked singles player in the country today. We like that. I'm trying to think of other notes. We did not have a good doubles weekend for the men or for the women. There's another thing I was going to say. Oh yeah, I mentioned Ava Rostar. Really have looked to try and see if I can, if I missed a podcast or a tweet or something, but don't know what's up with her. But we haven't seen Mahak John or Jane John. I forget. Shame on me.
Names are hard.
We haven't seen her in 2-3 weeks either for the women's team, and I mean she's a blue chip recruit coming in.
Lots of squad rotation. It's lots of squad rotation for unknown reasons.
Yeah, and I mean we've kind of been riding with this lineup for the last couple of weeks, but it's this is the life we live in non-rep sports. You don't really get a why is somebody out other than they're out, unless like Sarah Bates, we saw her go down. We know what happened there, but
it doesn't help when a lot of them aren't televised.
Exactly. Also, I don't know if we make this clear, when men's and women's tennis are at home, you can follow live streams for those. We found out about those recently, and I'd say it keeps us more in touch. George Burdell on YouTube, for those. Why they're not done by GT Athletics, I don't know. But
I think they are. It's just that GT Athletics doesn't have them on the main website, probably due to some sort of rights deal. Yeah. Maybe we're not supposed to expose them for this.
I mean, I don't know. I know how much they put just as much heart into this as anyone else. So if we can get more eyes on them for their live streams and whatnot, then that's that. I call that us doing our job well. So
fair enough. 2 other Georgia Tech sports teams also faced Miami. The first of them being women's basketball. They blew out Miami and then did the unthinkable. Please tell me what happened.
Do I have to?
Yes.
Georgia Tech looked offensively challenged up in Boston today. I don't know if they were frozen out or what, but they lost by far and away the number 15 seed this coming conference tournament when they took the L to Boston College, 49-43. The first quarter and fourth quarter were notoriously low scoring. The ladies trailed by 5 at the half. In the fourth quarter, they only scored 2 points in the entire 10-minute frame and lost by 6.
Let me just respond to this, that entire game line with, ooh.
They scored half their points from this game in the third quarter alone. We know they can do it. We know they can score. If they kept up that pace the whole game, they'd score 84. But man,
yeah, this is
ice cold.
bad.
Yeah.
This is a bad loss. I don't think you can excuse it in any way. I think you can try with short rest because I think this was on the back end of a 48-hour, 2 games of 48 hours. But this was bad. The good news, I guess, is that Syracuse lost 2. So Tech officially has the 3 seed in the ACC tournament. But if you were looking for this to be a ranked Georgia Tech squad heading into next week, you will be disappointed.
Actually, we're dumb. They played Florida State.
They played Florida State earlier this
Florida
week?
State Thursday night. Duh. I was like, that doesn't sound right. They played Miami at home, didn't they? But
maybe all the Florida teams are the same. That's my excuse.
When half your teams play Miami and Florida State in the same weekend, or Clemson or whatever, it. Anyways,
this is the problem with pod scheduling. It all looks the same.
Yeah, I feel like even in a normal year we get Miami and Florida State in tennis at the same time, but that's neither here nor there.
Anyway, they blew out FSU. I don't think the team necessarily matters. They probably also blew out Miami earlier last week. So
they did. It was.
Does it matter?
I mean, yes, it does, but also it doesn't. So we blew out Miami the game before Tuesday. Well, we did play Miami on Tuesday. Duh. I was there.
So they played Miami, FSU, and BC and lost the one game that they absolutely should have been predicted to win.
Yeah. They beat Miami by 12 on Tuesday, and then Florida State Thursday. Maybe they were tired. I don't know. It's weird. They've been going 3 games in a week, then 1 game in a week, then 3 games in a week, and 1 game in a week. So
it stinks. It just plain stinks. Again, you can sort of say short rest, but also meh. You should not have lost to this team. You should also not have scored just 2 points in the fourth quarter
against any team, quite frankly.
Against any team. Okay, let's talk about the men as we continue to watch the clock here. They did blow up Miami. That was a weird game. Just in terms of oh my God, the men's team is doing this? Levels of weird, right?
Yeah, I mean, they looked really good doing it too.
Oh, I'm not complaining about it. I like it when the men's team wins big versus, respectable competition.
Yes.
Obviously.
They did need to win this game.
Yeah. We did see that Jordan Usher in an interview earlier, I guess it's last week now, earlier last week said we're treating every game as a must win. And they sure showed it in this one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know what? If that's what it takes, that's what it takes, man.
Whatever it takes at this point.
Finish
your statement.
I was going to say, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that he's right and they all are must wins, with the chief among those being this coming Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday against Virginia Tech.
I sincerely think you have to win that game to make the tournament. Even beyond the ACC tournament, the ACC, whatever happens in Greensboro, you have to beat Virginia Tech to be back in the last 4 in, at least. Or even the next 4 out. You have to put yourself in bubble contention.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So another note here, the Boston College game that men's basketball was supposed to play was postponed due to COVID at Boston College. We hope everyone's okay there. It's unclear what the status of that game will be. That was supposed to be Wednesday. It was already pushed from Tuesday. So, not sure if that one will be made up before the tournament. So we'll see.
Yeah. honestly, we saw what happened when the women played Boston College. At this point, like, you can say we need wins, but I'm not convinced that the potential for a catastrophic loss makes me want to play that game. It's just, what's the point?
Mm-hmm. Moving on to more loss. This is not a good segue, but I'm making it anyway. Softball. They are currently 0-5 and currently in the they were 0-5 this weekend, and they're currently working on a bases loaded 2-out situation in the bottom of the 7th, down 3 runs versus Clemson as we speak.
I mean, that they're not dead yet. That's what it sounds like to me. Honestly, hopefully they resolve this with a grand slam right now. But
I mean, to give you a full-on update, it's let me see the jersey number. I think that is Cam Stanford at the plate with a 2-0 count that's just gone 2-1.
That's kind of the person you want to be in that situation.
I think they should bunt, personally.
How did we get here, Akshay?
How did we get here in terms of watching the game that I currently have on TV now, or how did we get here in terms of 0-5?
Yes, how did we get to the 0-5?
Oh, that's that. Ooh, hold on. Cam Stanford just hit a double to left field. That'll score. I love giving live commentary. That'll score 2 runs, I think, or at least 1.
Oh, they're going to do this to us, aren't they? 2 outs, second and third.
2 outs, second and third. They're gonna make us sweat for it. I mean, that's 1 run. Did they get the second? I think they got both runs in. So
they did.
It's bases loaded or runners on second and third with 2 outs, and Trisha Awald's up. So we'll keep you posted as we keep going here. It's going to be really weird to talk about this with the game going on.
I feel like this actively is going to change my thoughts on the like 1-5, 0-6. They're both not that great, but quite frankly, before even independent of going 5-0 last weekend, I expected no more than 2 wins out of this weekend. Like
I predicted 1 win versus FSU, and I didn't get that. So.
Yeah, I mean, that was a barometer series. Of course, Virginia Tech, who's also down here, absolutely blew out Florida State 3 games. So,
so just to give some more background, they set up the conference for the opening weekend. They set up everyone in pods. So the Atlanta pod had VT, Clemson, Florida State, and us, obviously. And so they played all the games at the MEU, which really puts a dent in your scheduling when softball says that they'll start their game at 1:30 and VT FSU goes an extra 30 minutes.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, did VT Clemson play here? Or did they play that in Clemson?
They played at Clemson.
Okay.
So I don't know what's up with that part. Like, one might say we also should have played VT at some point during this weekend, but
we get them on a regular weekend, I think. But also playing 9 games in a weekend, that is a lot.
I mean, I'm watching a pitcher pitch. I don't know, like this Clemson pitcher has pitched 2 or at least 2 games this weekend. They're 2 games versus us, at least.
Yeah.
So.
Full count, 2 outs.
So they did. I guess they did end up going 0-3 versus Clemson. This is the thing that I find frustrating with this team. So we watched them demolish Radford and Boise State. Those are expected results. Full credit given. But you have to add those caveats. With FSU, you kept pace with FSU for the majority of the first game, bits of the second game, except I think FSU turned on the boat race at a certain point, and then for the majority of the third game. With Clemson, you've been able to keep pace until the second or third time that Clemson's hitters go through or Tech's pitcher goes through the lineup, or through the Clemson lineup, and then it all falls apart. And I mean, I've watched all 6 of these games on TV now, and it just comes back to me for the pitching has not improved against against considerable competition as we would have liked, I think is my thought.
We jinxed the ever-loving bejesus out of Blake Nelliman, I think.
Yeah, she had some frustrating outings. She had some trouble with control in her start versus, I think it was versus FSU, and then those same struggles came back versus Clemson as well, to the point where I think in both games she was pulled after 2 innings of work. So it's the same story, I guess, as last year, where we started off hot that first weekend, or at least with some hope, and then things. I want to hear what you have to say on this. Then
we did not start hot last. Yes, we ran right into Washington, but we lost to USF opening weekend.
Well, I think the thing last year was we start with the way that we were talking about this team was very, very positive.
Yeah.
And then you go from that to the actual performances. And I think maybe last year was just 1 week adjusted, from this year, if that makes sense, to where this year we played 5 games. Softball is receiving votes in the coaches poll, and we're like, is this for real? Whereas last year, before the season started, we said, are we for real?
Yep. So it raised the standard, and that's great. The expectations went up, but I don't know. I hate being negative about any of these sports, and I don't want to be like, oh wow, the world is ending. We went 5-6, but we had a really good opportunity here to get at least a win or 2 or 3 against some good teams. Weren't expecting sweeps. Heck, weren't even really expecting series wins, I think is fair to say.
I think, to be frank, we were expecting take 1 game from FSU and then take a couple games from Clemson, I think was kind of our expectation.
Yeah, I think I set my bar at still have a winning record after weekend 2,
Yeah, and if you take 1 game from FSU if you win 1 game during the weekend, you're still at a winning record.
Yep.
But they just could not seal the deal on multiple occasions, and in my opinion, that kept coming back to pitching.
Yeah. Taking a dive into the third Florida State game, which is our most, I guess, closely fought game. The one we had our best shot in there. Just because I don't know, I want to be fair to them and look at good examples. Blake Nelliman, 2 innings pitched, 3 earned runs on 3 hits and a walk, 4 strikeouts. That's not terrible. And then Bruce came in relief and let in 2. That's, I don't know. You're not getting a whole lot from the offense, I guess, but these aren't bad games. I think today's Clemson games, they were both tight-knit affairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
The last Florida State game was a tight game. At some point, you got to think the luck's going to pay off. Heck, even the Clemson game yesterday was only 5-2. It's not like Tech's getting blown out or letting in, so many runs. It's just they're only as good as their bats will allow them to be, I think. And against good pitching, there just wasn't a lot there, It's really hard to win games when you only score 4 or 5 runs,
Mm-hmm. And I get it. I get that. It's just, it comes back to me. It comes to me, and when I think of these games, I keep coming back to the lack of consistent pitching. And I know that you can kind of say, hey, pitching obviously depends on the run support that you get. You sort of work your pitches, you work your strategy on the mound regardless of sport, whether it's softball or baseball, based on the run support that you have. I think there's some merit to that. But you know that your lineup can hit. They are statistically proven. They've proven that they can hit. Obviously, you're working with a small sample size, but the runs will come, the hits will come. There was some, batted balls in play kind of deal in this weekend where they sort of got unlucky. The hits and runs and walks will come, but you still have to have that consistency on the mound in order for those to be worth it. I mean, it's a chicken and egg problem at the end of the day, kind of.
Yeah. It's also definitely tough to be an away team in your own house. I think that might be at least a little, like, you don't want to play away games, frankly. So that's tough, but you're not wrong. Like, good pitching doesn't need great tier hitting, and great tier hitting only needs good pitching, but you can't have neither,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like, frankly, last weekend, we didn't need to have elite tier pitching. And I mean, it's good to see them shut down these teams that we need to beat. But, yeah, no, I will say this. I think we got better as the weekend went on.
I will cop to that. I will give that credit.
Because, we keep Florida State close, but then kind of let it go towards the end, 8-1. All right, we figure out their pitchers a little bit more, 7-3. Again, 5-4. Clemson, we lose by 3, then 2, then I think it was 2 in the first game. If not, it was 1. It wasn't more than that.
They were all close.
Yeah, and these are 1, 2, 3-run games, with the exception of the first 2 against Florida State. And that's not a satisfying result, but I think it's leagues better than probably we would have seen in the last 2 years against, well, Clemson didn't exist 2 years ago, which whole other can of worms. But
whole other can of worms that I have a bone to pick with, but I digress.
I was going to say, like, Florida, we have not been, frankly, really that competitive against Florida State in the last.
We have like a 2019 ACC quarterfinal. That speaks to that.
Yeah. Like, that game was close in the beginning, and then they let it get out of hand,
Yeah, I don't know what more we can say that's new, different, and fun about this weekend for softball.
I wouldn't expect them to be receiving votes tomorrow or the next day when that stuff comes out.
Absolutely not. But I think it'll be interesting the next couple of weeks to see how the schedule unfolds, especially next opponent is Louisville, question mark?
I think it's still too early in the year for that. No, we have the Kennesaw, Georgia, someone else out of conference weekend, I believe.
I need to check the calendar, but we should have done that before. Bad podcast business on us.
It's been a wacky weekend in terms of what we've had off the top of the cuff or not at all been prepared for.
Speaking of which, baseball. Let's talk about it.
Am I going to lead off with it didn't look like they were prepared for the season to start? Because that was my first take yesterday at the game. But
I mean, I think I would kind of agree with you. With the exception of today, I think today was a lot cleaner.
We lose one silly game opening weekend every year. Every year.
It's kind of funny, in a darkly funny way. Don't get me wrong. I don't like losing. In like a darkly funny way, how this program every single year will lose to a mid or low major on opening weekend.
Yep.
In 2019, it was Richmond.
Yeah.
How?
In 2020, I think we lost a game to St. John's, right?
Yeah, like how? And we've covered those teams before. Like, I wrote previews for both of those teams. I know exactly how good or bad both of them were. They were not good teams in the previous seasons.
Yeah.
And it's always the Saturday game too, if I remember correctly. It's always the Saturday game.
You want to go way back into ancient history? I very distinctly recall losing to Bradley in 2018 because my dad was there laughing at me the whole time.
I also remember that, which was painful, I will say.
Oh, it was absolutely painful. But
Just to recap, Tech baseball opened its season versus Eastern Kentucky. No slouch, to be fair. Not even just based on the results, but just in general, they are no slouch. They are easily the second or just top line best team in the OVC, along with Jacksonville State. They went 2-1, won game 1 and game 3, lost game 2 in a bit of a shootout. And Tech will play again in midweek versus Mercer, but we can talk about that at a later time. The pitching in game 2 was, in a word, bad. I think that is sort of the lead here.
Yeah, they could not hit the broadside of a barn.
It was frustrating because you expect a lot. Andy Archer was the starter in game 2, and you haven't seen him pitch in a year and a half, more or less. I mean, he was out for all of 2019, was supposed to be healthy last year. But obviously you have COVID kind of sort of ruin that plan. So this is his first collegiate start ever. And it was not good, to be very frank.
Yeah, it was. The pitching got worse after he left. And I think
yes, it was an adventure after he left.
If you let what came after, I would have been like, okay, Andy did all right. I have my scorecard around here somewhere. Let me go dig that out.
Yeah, so let me while he does that, let's talk a little bit more about the games. We said pitching was bad in game 2. Game 1 was a bit of a tightly contested affair. I think there were a couple of defensive mistakes where Georgia Tech relief pitching sort of came close to costing Tech the game in spots. And then you had some uncharacteristic defensive mistakes, like I said, from Luke Waddell and a couple other players. Things like I said were much cleaner in game 3. It was a little bit. It was pretty low stress, and Tech was able to take the series. I think in general the hitting is coming along as we expected. The lineups were certainly interesting from a couple of different angles. I know some of us wanted to see Compton in there. And Hall's beginning of 2021. Wow, I was about to say 2019. Has been a little disappointing in terms of what he can do at the plate, but I think that is coming along as expected, especially from the younger players.
Yeah, I'm not gonna question the master too much here, but I don't understand the lineups. You can say that coming along, but I will leave you with that opinion. I'm not gonna.
I try to put it as politically as possible,
as you are very good at, and I respect that. But I continue. There's always one or two that kind of baffle me. I will reserve judgment though until we have a couple more games under our belt. But I think Reed, Compton, Parada, Trace Gonzalez, DeLeo, like those are the guys who have shown to have good at bats, to see a lot of pitches, to make contact when needed, hit or otherwise. And I don't know. That's the curse of having a really, really talented lineup, right? That you're going to have people and opinions, and there's going to be men lost in the shuffle. So It's really about how can they best mitigate that, I think.
I think a notable surprise that we saw this weekend was the appearance of Malloy at third base. I don't think we'd heard a lot about him. He's a transfer from Vanderbilt, and he really impressed me this weekend.
Yeah, he's looked really good. After seeing him play on Friday, I was disappointed not to see him in the lineup on Saturday. I don't know why they let him go, but I'd like to see more of him. I'm not going to say he's like, full sense or anything, but yeah, no, definitely somebody I want to see getting more looks.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he was good at the plate. Had a couple of really nifty plays at third base as well, including a web gem from Saturday, I think. I think it was a throw on a hop that he sidearmed over to first base. He was really good. I think in my mind, obviously it's been 3 games, but I think that, part of the infield is sort of settled. I think maybe you rotate out players and maybe try some people out first. I didn't watch Jenkins specifically to sort of grade the performance. Also, I'm not as educated to do that, but I really think that Waddell-Wilhite combination in the center of the ballpark, and then you add Malloy on the left side on the third baseline. I think that side of the infield is really, really good, both at the plate and in the field.
Yeah, I would agree. Waddell seemed to have picked up his fielding apropos today, which I like. Couple miscues. I think that was another theme that we saw. A lot of defensive miscues early in the weekend. That errors, to quote a friend of the podcast, Ethan Kreger, errors and walks are what do you in college baseball, because you let a couple get on base and then bam, that one hit is brutal. So for the future, limiting that would be awesome. But no, it seemed like it picked up on Sunday. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, but
again, I think Sunday's game was incredibly clean. We had the one flub from Sam Crawford on a throw to. Other than that, it seemed like a pretty clean, mistake-free outing. And Crawford was also really impressive on the mound on Sunday as well.
Well, that's good. If you get a lockdown Sunday starter, that is almost all the way there. Herder looked pretty decent on Friday.
He did get an early pull on Friday, I will say.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see him pulled so quick, but he didn't get. Did he get any playing time last year coming off the Tommy John?
I'm not entirely sure. It also depends on the timing of the Tommy John surgery from 2019.
Yeah.
Which I remember was late in the year, so he may still have been in the rehab program. My understanding is he was fit and ready to go for opening day this year. And there was some talk of him being on a pitch count. I think it was also mentioned on the broadcast. He was pulled somewhere around 80 pitches, I think.
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible it was just just like a programmed in pull. But it did strike me as a little early. I don't know. I think we just need to see more from this team. I need more data points to really sort of make a good opinion about where this team is, what this team is, because it's so unclear to me after these performances what we're looking at.
We need to not lose to Mercer midweek this week. I'll tell you that. Hopefully Grissom looks good. If Grissom could play his way into like weekend starter contention, I think that's safe. I mean, maybe not great things about Herder and Archer, but just
well, pitching depth is always good. We talked about this last week when we were doing the baseball preview. One of the things that did the 2019 team is because they didn't have the third starter. The lack of that third starter hurt them going into that regional. So if you have more quality pitching depth, that is always a good thing.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm not gonna complain about it if he does well.
I just hope that Coach Burrell is teaching more than pitch design, miles per hour. Like location and control has to be part of that. And I mean, obviously, I didn't go to the game today, so I can't really comment. And part Nick, he looked good on Friday in terms of guys.
He was good. Him and Maxwell were good today as well. I think Maxwell still has the control issues that we've been seeing from him. We saw early last year as well. But I mean, again, you get 2 innings with a guy, 20 pitches. It's not a lot of data to go off of.
Yeah. I just hope that there are people that can have the next man up attitude coming out of the bullpen, because if things keep happening the way it did, they're going to need that.
Yeah, and they just need to figure out what rotation isn't the right word, but what a pattern of good relief pitching looks like. I think it's who can you trust in that bullpen to get you outs when you need outs. It's still a work in progress. It's not all the bullpen's fault for Saturday. I think there were, like we said, there have been defensive miscues in a couple places, so there is that. But again, pitching is the key, right? We talked about with softball. It's the same thing with baseball. Figure out the pitching. The hitting will come. The hitting is there. The hitting talent is there. You need to figure out the pitching. You have to have both.
Yeah, I know this is cherry picking one data point, but I'm looking at my scorecard now. I'm kind of running my totals because I forgot to do that yesterday. Compton, single in the second, single in the third with an RBI, strikeout in the fifth, home run, his second of the weekend, I believe, in the seventh, was pulled for Malloy in the eighth. I don't see, based on this weekend, how you can justify benching Compton from here out, frankly. Like, he is easily one of our best three bats.
Mm-hmm. And interesting part is that he was not in the lineup today.
Oh, I didn't watch the game. I was at tennis and softball.
I don't believe he was in the lineup today, and we had a conversation about that in the writers' room.
When they dropped the lineup. You're completely right.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm willing to give Dan, like, I do have some questions about lineup construction, like I led with. Like, there have been some questionable choices, but I am also willing to give them, like you said, the master the benefit of the doubt for the first couple of games and let the wheat separate itself from the chaff, so to speak, right? And understand what our most optimal lineup is, both on the mound and obviously in the batter's box. So I don't know. Yeah. I'm willing to give him until the first, like the first ACC series, which I guess is next weekend. But you get what I'm saying. Until after the first ACC series.
Yeah, I agree. We're getting close to that, though. You know, if it's him trying to see who works best with who, based on the at bats I've seen from Holland versus what I've seen from Parada, I like that in that position battle. I like DeLeo in the lineup a lot. I think Reed, Jenkins obviously need to be out there all the time. We know Waddell's a good player.
We know Will Height's a good player. You keep those guys in there for their glove, even if they're not hitting particularly well, I think.
Yeah, Waddell will figure it out, and I think he did. He did a fine job on Saturday. Ethan and I we had some interesting takes on the fielding, but I mean, if you look at it, 2 singles and an RBI, a walk. He was very close to being if he wouldn't have been the third out of the inning in the second, that would have been a productive out. 1 strikeout in the fourth. That is about as solid of a stat line on the day as you can ask for. So I don't know. I wish. See, I keep my scorecard very differently than a traditional box score, and I keep a lot of info in it. So I wish I would have had it for Friday because I forget a couple of the takeaways I had. But you know, the more you know for next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like I said, they will play Mercer this week in a midweek game. You mentioned that Marquise Grissom Jr., the third junior is starting that game according to what we've been reading. I'm currently looking up the schedule to see who they play next weekend. ? Baseball schedule. They will play NC State in Raleigh next weekend to end the month. So it gets rough That's off the bat.
Program right there.
So better be ready. If you're going to do any lineup tinkering, you can throw one game, but you can't throw all 3.
Yep. The last stat I want to leave you with, looking at Saturday, I want you to guess how many men we left on base.
I don't want to talk about it because I know how much stuff it is. Or I know how large it is.
Okay, fair enough. For the people, it's a dirty dozen. So that's not in the pitching. That's what we got to clean up, and we'll be able to reassess next week after we play the Wolfpack.
Yeah, I think it happens every single year. We keep doing this same dance with the runners left on base, and man, I wish it would end.
Well, we can hope. Hopefully, this is the start of newer, better things.
One can hope. Last point I want to leave us with. I totally watched this happen, and it didn't register in my brain. But Jinsaleo for softball had a triple play.
Oh,
and I did not register when I saw it. But it was. I'm looking at the replay right now off of Twitter, and it is very, very good. So go find that if you get the chance.
Yeah.
Don't see one of those every day, so I will take it.
Agreed.
All right. Anything else before we wrap up for today?
Let's see. We got 2 games left in the women's basketball season. We got, I think, 3 or 4 left for the men. So those are coming down the stretch. Obviously, we talked softball. They'll have UGA on Sunday. That's if you're going to watch one game this week, that is the one to watch from them. Baseball, obviously, 4 days of action. So you got your fill. If you're a basketball nut, might want to catch them before their seasons wind up. But men's swimming and diving. Greensboro, I think they start Wednesday. Should be in the hunt for hopefully a top 5 finish, but we'll see about that.
Yeah, it'll certainly be an interesting week. Another busy week.
Yep.
I think we'll have a lot to talk about next weekend again.
I mean, we set a goal for 30 minutes today, and this is probably an hour right now. So, enjoy, people.
I'm glad that I get to edit this. He says, regretting having to edit this.
Anyways, keep an eye on everything. To the people out there, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.
Yes, listeners, thank you all for listening, and we will see you again soon.